You hear it all the time. Every coach, every analyst talking about rhythm in boxing. What is rhythm? And more importantly, how can you utilize it to have success when you fight? Rhythm is the pace or cadence of boxing. More specifically, it can refer to your movement, your defense, or your offense. Your ability to read your opponent's rhythm lets you almost supernaturally predict their behavior, and your ability to break and recognize your own rhythm allows you to stay unpredictable and threatening. In boxing, you live and die by your ability to set and break patterns. Helping us with our lesson today is going to be our competitor, Nick. To own the rhythm of a fight, you must understand two things, the half beat and the long beat. The half beat is a double beat. So my half beat, if I set my usual rhythm, that's our half beat, 2 strikes within 1 beat. And our long beat is a beat and change. It's important to remember with both of these that you must set a rhythm to break a rhythm. If I'm demoing with Nick, I set a rhythm with my jab and he's slipping it. Jab, 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 jab. That's the half beat. Or jab, jab, jab. That's the long beat, where you let him move into the position that he was defensible and then you meet him there. This setting of rhythm is immensely important because if you have no rhythm and you're just punching completely unpredictably and in chaos, your opponent's going to become sheepish, they're going to use non-specific defenses, and you're going to have less opportunities to counter. In boxing, it's of paramount importance that you are deceptive, that you are not too honest, that you're setting and breaking patterns, and that you're deceiving your opponent with your feints and with your rhythm. Feinting's like a cheat code where you get all of the return, all of the good things of throwing a punch without having to use any of the energy or leaving yourself vulnerable. You can feint with any part of your body. You can feint with your hand, your elbow, your shoulder, your hips, your feet, and you can feint different movements. So you can feint like you're moving left, moving right, moving in, moving out. You can even feint defensive tactics. Whatever you need to do to pull your opponent into a bad position to be able to counter them on the half beat. It's important to remember when you're feinting that you need to feint to your audience. So if I'm working with Nick, who's a pretty experienced competitor, I can just twitch my elbow and he'll bite on that because he's anticipating, he's looking for that shot. When I'm working with somebody who's brand new, they're not gonna see this little twitch of the elbow. When you're working with somebody who's newer and newer, you really gotta sell that feint. You might have to half throw that shot to get them to react and pull themselves into a bad position. This segues into an important conversation if you are being feinted at. It is not in Nick's interest to try to guess if I'm feinting or not. There is no glory in him standing there, ha 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 ha, smugly, showing that he didn't bite on a feint, because that only leaves him vulnerable. You want to react to feints to keep yourself safe in case it's a real attack coming through, and as we're gonna discuss moving forward, you're gonna depend on your defense on the half beat and layering in your defense to keep you safe if it was a lie. Your punch selection and counter selection is going to differ if you're trying to optimize it, whether you're using half beats, long beats, or just breaking pattern on rhythm. If you're working on the half beat, then you're gonna hit your opponent where they are. You're gonna hit them where they go. For example, if I'm feeding Nick a jab and he's slipping, if I'm countering on the half beat, I'm gonna hit him where he goes. He slipped to his closed side in my cross lane. If I choose to pull the trigger on that beat, I wanna let him run into my cross. This is the best rhythm mix-up if you're working with a fast, unpredictable fighter because you need to assess when you decide to do that half beat, where they've gone to, and try to meet them there. When you're countering on the long beat, you want to hit your opponent as they try to return to their original stance. You want to let them move into the shot. So if I'm using the long beat in the same situation that we were doing before, I set the rhythm with my jab, Nick's slipping back and forth as he should be. and I hit him with the 3 as he would be returning to stance. This is best for opponents who defend proactively, opponents that old school coaches would call bobbers and weavers, like a Dwight Muhammad Kawi, a Julio Cesar Chavez, or most famously a Joe Frazier. If you're not playing with rhythm, but you're just breaking the pattern of the punches you're throwing, then you want to try to select a punch that your opponent is moving into. Using the same system that we just used, I'm setting the rhythm with the jab, I'm trying to hit Nick as he's slipping to his closed side, I would sub in the 6. It's on rhythm, but it allows him to move into that shot and is going to give me a little extra mustard on that strike. So how do you deal with these tactics defensively? Well, as with most defensive problems, layering in your defense and keeping line of sight is going to fix 9 out of 10 problems that you run into. So the half beat is best defended by layering in your defense, by recognizing as you slip side to side, as you defend, you need to have your guard protecting you as well. If I'm working with Nick and he slips to his closed side, he's going to lift those hands up because he knows he's in my cross lane. So he's protected. If I quickly drop that 2, it catches his glove instead of catching on his face. You defend against the long beat by recognizing you've been duped and immediately falling back to one of your non-specific defenses, like creating distance, ducking, or throwing up that high guard. New boxers will frequently gravitate towards incomplete tactics to try and solve the problem of rhythm. The first is they choose to not move their head, to not duck, to not roll, to not move their feet because they fear that they're going to run into a shot, and they hunker down behind their guard. This obviously comes with all of the downsides of hunkering down behind your guard, and you can't even make that high guard functional by pairing it with movement. The second tactic, myself included when I was a young fighter, that a lot of novices gravitate towards is they try to set a pace that is so fast and so high that rhythm becomes meaningless. Where they are always busy, they are always attacking, they take this otherwise slow, consistent cadence that a high-level, intelligent, thoughtful fight is happening at, and they make sure that every half beat is accounted for so that nobody could possibly work any more quickly. If you have the gas tank and the work rate to do this, you can kind of get away with this during your novice, your first 10 fights as an amateur in a short 3-round fight. This does not play out at the professional level, and there are lots of tactics you're going to run into when you go open from experienced fighters who are going to be able to shut this down. As with lots of things in boxing, we're running into a Goldilocks problem here. Too hot, too cold. It's tough to get it just right, and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of experience to make somebody barely miss. In boxing, you don't want people to miss by a mile, and you don't want to be vulnerable to every trick that they lay down either. It just takes a lot of time. Look at people like Canelo, look at people like Julio Cesar Chavez, if you're looking at fighters that have really nailed this position. Any technique in isolation isn't of much value, but you need to start practicing it if you're ever going to become a master at its usage. So today we've introduced the half beat and the long beat, and I would encourage you to introduce them into your next spar so that you can build towards that mastery and use them effectively and confidently when you fight. Cut! Giving myself applause. Somebody's gotta.